Okay.
The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission will now begin.
Good evening, all. My name is Cynthia Jackson. I am the chair of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission, and I'm going to call this meeting for March 9th to order. As we will begin, I will note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members of the City Council and city staff as authorized under Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, due to the declared local public health emergency. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so that we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Commissioner Abdi.
Here.
Commissioner Sarah.
Here.
Commissioner Crockett.
Here.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
Commissioner McGuire.
Here.
Commissioner Pinot.
Here.
Commissioner Sparks.
Here.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Here.
Chair Jackson.
Here.
There are 9 commissioners present.
Let the record show that we do have a quorum. Next, we're going to proceed to our agenda, a copy of which has been posted for public access to the city's Legislative Information Management System, LIMS, which is available in lims.minneapolismn.gov. The first motion is the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved by Commissioner Pino.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Sarah.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abdi.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pinot.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
There are 9 ayes.
That motion carries and the agenda is adopted. Next, we're going to move to the acceptance of the minutes from meetings from January 12th, 2021 and February 16th of 2021. May I have a motion to accept these minutes?
So moved by Commissioner Pino.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Sparks.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Abdi.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
There are 9 ayes.
Okay, thank you. That motion also carries and the minutes for January and February have been accepted. The next order of business we have before us is the acceptance of public comments. I will open the floor and invite comments from the community. We will limit the public comment period to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. And just as a reminder, you will need to press *6 to unmute your phone, and please state your name for the recording. With that, are there any community members here on the line that would wish to address the commission? You'll need to hit *6 to unmute.
Okay, well, I'll go first. This is Dave Bicking of Minneapolis, and I just wanted to start with a recommendation that the PCOC should conduct a study or a survey of the experiences of both complainants and officers with the OPCR process. This is something that I've brought up a number of times over the 8 years of your existence. It's never been done. It seems to me a very fundamental thing to do to determine if you are meeting the purposes of the ordinance and to give some input into any possible changes or improvements to be made to that ordinance. So I would very much appreciate someone initiating a vote to do that. I think you have the authority to do that based on, it's similar to the complaint filing study that you did in 2016 to see how that process worked, which of course it didn't. I mean, the study identified a lot of problems, probably should be redone also. Second thing quickly I wanted to say about your synopses, I noticed that on several of these synopses, there is the outcome that's listed is just that it was investigated. That doesn't seem to me to be much of an outcome. Outcome just says administrative investigation. We don't know if that means that it ever went to a panel. Was there discipline? Was there coaching? What happened from that? And I think that's important because the synopses are a random summary of cases, and it's helpful to find from those, and we've done those studies to indicate, what is happening to most of the complaints. We know that well under 1% lead to any discipline at all. So what happens to the others? And I think this is one of our few chances to see that. And with the way the synopses are presented this month, we don't get that. So I'd appreciate some comment or correction of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Remember to *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Chuck Turchick. First thing, the number for the conference ID for the call-in on the agenda itself, as opposed to the little box that first comes up, are different. The number on the agenda itself, the 9-digit number, does not work. The one on the little box does for these calls. My first comment has to do with a power that you have under the ordinance that the PCOC has never exercised, and that is the power to participate in the performance review of the Chief of Police. Your rules not only makes it a power, but makes it a duty. Your rules say shall, the ordinance says may, but nevertheless, you've never exerted that power. This was very similar to the CRA. The CRA also had that power, and for years they didn't exert it. And the reason was because the mayor never informed the CRA, and the mayor, since the PCOC was established, has never informed the PCOC when they're doing performance reviews of the chief. Presumably, they do them when the chief is reappointed or nominated for reappointment, and that has happened twice during the course of the PCOC's existence. But since the mayor did not contact the PCOC saying I'm doing a performance review, neither Mayor Hodges or Mayor Fry did that, the PCOC has not participated in a performance of the review of the chief for its entire existence. 2 or 3 years ago, a committee was formed by the PCOC to develop a format for how they would participate in the performance review the next time around. And Chief Arredondo, if we still have a police chief come November, his term ends this December. So I'm just alerting you 9 months ahead of that time that you really ought to participate in the performance review, at least for this time around on his reappointment. A second comment I have, if you Google Office of Police Conduct Review Data Dashboard, you will come up to a page that will give you the Police Conduct Review's data portal. And on that data portal, there's 2 bar graphs. The one on the left is titled Discipline Issued by Chief. And there's a color code there that's headed Discipline. The items under that color code are demotion, letter of reprimand, suspension, termination, coaching. So coaching on the OPCR's own data portal is listed under discipline. That's why we in the public are confused. We were confused because the policy and procedure manual was previously worded very, very badly. Now that has been changed. They have corrected that since Commissioner Sarah brought it to their attention. And I see you're discussing coaching later on the agenda, so I would call to your attention that the OPCR's own data portal lists coaching under discipline. I have alerted them to that fact 3 or 4 times now. I have written the joint supervisors about that, but they still list coaching under discipline. I don't know why, if it's to make it look like there's more discipline that's occurring, because about half the bars on the bar graph are for coaching decisions, not for the issuance of discipline. So maybe you could put pressure on the OPCR to change that so the public will be less confused about whether coaching is discipline. I happen to believe coaching is not discipline, but we get these mixed messages. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment?
My name is Emma Peterson, and I'm going to talk to you guys today. So I was a former Minneapolis Police Explorers. For you who don't know, the Minneapolis Police Explorers is the department's youth program. And I have actually had a lot of experience with filing complaints through the OPCR, through Internal Affairs, and also the HR department. And so I really want to echo Dave Bicking's call for an audit of the OPCR process, because I've been through it. And let me tell you a little bit about my story. So from
just as a reminder, Emily, you have 2 minutes. So
yep, I know.
Okay.
I started as an explorer when I was 14 years old, and from the time I was 14, I had male and female Minneapolis police officers telling me about their sex lives in detail. I looked up to these police officers. I trusted them. But they used me. One officer used to use me to find other attractive female police officers for him when we went out of town on competitions. Another police officer called me in the middle of the night because they were stumbling drunk and couldn't find their way home. So I had to go downtown the streets of Rochester to find her at 1 a.m. I also witnessed racism, such as a member of the Minneapolis Police Department calling 3 Latino explorers the 3 amigos, and also calling the North Minneapolis a war zone. So these are a few things that I've gone through. To tell you all of it would take hours, and I filed many complaints about what happened. And after I filed complaints, I heard nothing from the OPCR, from HR, and from IA. They took years to conduct the investigations. They do not give you any timelines or status updates. And it is incredibly confusing, but after going through it, I know it very well now. So I just want to echo what Dave said, to audit the OPCR process, but also audit the process that got you on this commission, because I think that it's honestly very flawed. I know that a few of you didn't even apply for this commission, but got on the wrong one, which I think is incredibly ridiculous. There is also a history of the staff who choose who goes on the PCOC, not letting community members like myself or like my godfather, who is an attorney, from getting on the commission, even though we've applied. And I think it's frankly BS. So I think that needs to be audited as well. And I know you'll never ask for an audit, because after all, you got your seat on it, so you don't have much interest in it, but that's what I think you should do. And I've never seen any of you at a meeting before, but I've been coming for the past few years, fighting for myself and for other young women like me who wanted to be police officers, but then met an incredibly sexist department, and racist department, I will add. So thank you.
Thank you. Very legitimate concerns there, Miss Emily. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or ask a question? You'll need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. We have a limited time here, so if you would like to make a comment, please do so.
If there aren't any further comments, Madam Chair, I'll just reference something I posted in the chat, simply saying Mr. Bickings referenced the 2016 PCOC research and study and provided the link for the research and study that he referenced. So the commissioners can view that at their leisure.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Pineau. Okay, with no further comments from the public, the next item on our agenda, well, I want to thank everyone that spoke tonight. You have raised some very legitimate concerns and trust that this commission will address them. The next item on our agenda is a presentation regarding MPD's Property and Evidence Unit. As you'll recall, at our January meeting, Commissioner Pineau moved to invite representatives from MPD's Property and Evidence Division to respond to our questions that arose from discussion of the case summary 18-20737. Churston Hammerberg,
You got it correctly. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor of the Property and Evidence Unit is here at our invitation to present more background and information. Ms. Hammerberg has worked for the Minneapolis Police Department since 2000 as a civilian supervisor of the Property and Evidence Unit and all civilian unit of the MPD. Before that, she was with the Crystal Police Department in crime prevention and evidence for 4 years. She's a volunteer on the board of directors for the International Association for Property and Evidence and a member of the Minnesota Association of Property and Evidence. She's also been a resident of Minneapolis for more than 30 years. Welcome, Ms. Hammerberg.
Thank you so much. And commissioners, thank you for having me. If we can pull up the PowerPoint that I prepared, I'll walk through this. I requested some questions so that it would help guide my presentation, and the response was positive. So what I'd like to do is walk through my presentation, and then at the conclusion, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. So we can advance the slide. The Minneapolis Police Department Property and Evidence Unit, we basically store everything from A to Z. Everything that comes to us gets a barcode, gets a storage location, and tracking information so that we can find it in future, whether it's returning it to an owner, getting it ready for court, providing it for investigation, a whole variety of things. So we basically say that we are the best babysitters and best magicians in the city because we take things, we take care of them, and then when they're needed, they reappear from storage. And as you can see, our warehouse space is full, but we have space. We just moved into a new warehouse about a year ago, and we are still getting things settled. But we are able to locate everything that we need. We can go ahead and advance the slide. So the first thing I learned was that the case study was a 2018 case that there was missing or misplaced evidence. So the basics of the case, as I understand it, is that there was a 911 call for service. The CAD, which is the computer-aided dispatch system, that is used by the communications 911 service, assigns a case number, and this case number was for an assault report. An officer made contact with the victim. They collected evidence, which was underwear. They completed a domestic violence supplement and the medical release form. The officer cleared the scene. They entered their property report for the case number 18-360578. Later on, they wrote a report for the case number 18-370578 on the 5th of November before the end of their shift. You can advance the slide. The case was assigned to an investigator. The investigator read about the evidence collected, but didn't see the evidence listed in the property section of the case report. The investigator contacted the submitting officer. Searches were conducted for the missing evidence with negative results. The case investigation actually continued without the physical evidence. You can advance. The conclusion was that there was an investigation opened by the PCOC. It was discovered through the investigation that evidence was submitted by the officer on the 5th of November using an incorrect case number 18-360578. Evidence intake was done under the incorrect case number. There was no case entered in the PIMS system, which is the records management system, with the incorrect case number. The correct case number actually had all the supplements. So the evidence eventually was moved to the correct case number. So if you were to look at that today, you would see the evidence listed there. You can advance the slide. Just some definitions so that everyone understands kind of the language that I speak in property and evidence. We have a CAD, which is a computer-aided dispatch system. It captures all the information related to a call for service. This is what the 911 dispatchers use to log calls for service. Evidence is document or oral statement, material objects that are admissible as testimony in a court of law. Evidence continuity, it's a fancy term for chain of custody, and that's the documented history of an item of evidence that, or an item that we have either for evidence or safekeeping. A property report is a number that's assigned to all items submitted as evidence or safekeeping for the purpose of tracking. Safekeeping is any material object of value, however slight, tangible or intangible, to which an owner has a legal right. And I just wanted to kind of review what those definitions are. So as we go through this, there's a joint understanding of what those definitions are. You can advance the slide, please. So the CAD, when you call 911, you speak with an operator. The operator coordinates with the dispatcher. The dispatcher talks with the responding officer or sends the call out on the radio. And the CAD is where police calls for service are documented. And this is just a screenshot of what the CAD looks like as it is presented on a computer screen for an officer to view. So you can advance the slide. A couple things we need to track evidence. We need a computer workstation, and that can be either a desktop workstation or a computer that's in the squad car. You need a barcode printer. Those are located at precincts and investigative units and here at the property warehouse. Those are not in the squad car. Then you need a scanner. Those are also located where the printers are. So when you print out a barcode label, the scanner allows you to scan that into the system. So that's the setup you need in order to take care of a piece of evidence or a property. You can advance the slide, please. In evidence continuity or a chain of custody, there are a couple of different responsibilities. The officer's responsibility first is to enter a property report in PIMS, which is the record management system, related to a case report. So you can enter information about evidence from the squad car, and you can enter a report from the squad car, and you can enter the chain of custody from the squad car, but you have to print the barcode labels at a printer station. You enter a case report in the records management system, and then you deposit property or evidence into a temporary secure locker. You can enter a property report and generate barcodes without having a case report in the system. That's the way this system is designed, because many cases are entered in the system at a later time, and the evidence can be entered from the squad car. So there are two separate functions that happen. So it is possible to enter evidence under a case number that doesn't exist and then enter a case in the system that does exist. The evidence unit responsibility from that point is that we pick up property and evidence from temporary secure lockers around the city at the precincts. We bring all of those items to the property warehouse. We do an intake of all the evidence into the records management system, and this is where it shows it went from the scene to a temporary locker, from the temporary locker to the property warehouse. From the property warehouse, then we assign a storage location, and we continue to manage the chain of custody. So it would go from the storage location to an investigator who would take it to the BCA or take it back to their office to continue reviewing things, and then items would be returned back to us, and then it may be checked out for court at a later time, and we're managing that flow of history of the item. You can advance the slide, please. The MPD policy and procedure manual, as you cited in your report, was all MPD employees taking possession of property, whether it's evidence or non-evidence, shall place such property in the custody of the property and evidence unit and complete the inventory prior to the end of their shift. The inventory shall include all evidence seized regardless of whether an arrest has been made, and this includes sworn employees working off-duty employment. You can advance, please. The question was, how can errors happen? Well, the first answer is that we're all human. The system that we have both in the CAD and in the records management system that we call PIMS is only as good as what information gets put into it. No system is fail-safe. Looking at the CAD, as you can see in this description, it's easy to reference a wrong case number if you're looking quickly. And on the day in question, I looked at all of the cases that were generated, and it was about 415 cases in a 12-hour period of time. So numbers are easy to transpose. Multitasking at the same time can lead to reduced concentration, and that ultimately leads to errors, as we all know, because we're all trying to multitask at various times in our day. You can advance, please. So first thing I want to show you, I want you to take a look. If you'll make one click, please. Note this number. And then if you'll make a second click, please. Look at this number. What do you notice about these two things?
The 6 and the 7 are changed around.
The 6 and the 7 are changed around. Observant. And that is something that is very easy to do. And in looking at this case, the 6 and the 7 were actually changed around. One was the case number where all the supplements were written, and one was the case number used for the evidence that was submitted. If you could advance the slide, please. So what failed? The case number was incorrect on the evidence from the very beginning. The top picture on the right, I've blacked out the names of individuals for privacy. However, I left the case number handwritten in the corner, and the case number that you see handwritten in the corner is the incorrect case number. If you look on the second piece down, you can see that the officer created the case number or the property number on the wrong case number, and you can see that where it says GOMP 2018-360578. And if you look on the bottom picture, you can see that all the chain of custody or the tracking of the evidence is right there. And I'm just trying to find, I'm looking at halfway down, it says 18-11-06, and the time is 0708 with an employee number of 129343. If you read across that line, the case number 370568 is in the case notes. So you can see where the transcription or the transposition of the numbers occurred. You can advance the slide, please. So what else failed? The PIMS system, Police Information Management System, which is our records management system, was brand new to the MPD as of June 5th of 2018. The case happened in November of 2018, which was 5 months into the new system. The officer didn't recognize their error. The investigator, when they were looking at the case, didn't ask immediately when it was noticed where the evidence might be. So there was no search that was done immediately. Assumptions were made by the officer, and as I read the report, one of the statements made was it, quote, might have been thrown away because it was in a plastic bag. The evidence was in a plastic bag. No one involved, the investigator, the officer, a variety of other individuals understood how to efficiently run queries that may have solved this mystery sooner. And in this system, we're able to query by an officer's name, by date and time, by type of property or evidence, and we can use a variety of variables to do queries to see if we can find something that was mistakenly entered under an incorrect case number. Nothing in our system, in the records management system, warns that there's not an associated case for the evidence that's entered if you enter the evidence before another case is in the system. So it's designed that way because officers take evidence and they want to enter it as chain of custody as soon as possible. And then when they get to a station where they can sit and think and write their report, then they write their report separately. So and then those two things are merged together. If the case numbers are the same, the evidence is merged with the actual case. In this situation, the evidence had a different case number than the case report, and so those two things never merged together. So you can advance the slide, please. Future things for prevention. Number one, trying to reduce human error. There are a number of things that we can all practice, and that's reviewing things before we submit them. And that may be evidence, that may be an email that you send quickly. It's reducing the human error and basically reviewing things before you hit that go button. Reinforcing a process for officers that they do at the beginning and the end of each shift. At the beginning of the shift, they're trained to look over their squad car, make sure that there's nothing in there that was accidentally left by a previous shift or a previous officer that used the squad car. At the end of their shift, they're trained to do that very same thing, is to go through their squad car and clean things out. And I can't speak to what happens in the transition with officers. I think sometimes people don't take the time that's necessary to do those last details because you're either coming onto your shift and you're responding to calls as soon as you climb in your car, or you're ending your shift after a long day and you've got other things on your mind and you're ready to leave for the day. The report could have been reviewed by the supervisor, which would include saying, you took this type of report, is there associated evidence, and verifying that that evidence existed in the report. When an issue is discovered, notifying someone sooner rather than later so that those types of searches can be conducted in a more expedient manner, more timely manner, so that the evidence in this case may have been able to be located as soon as the investigator noticed that it was missing from the case. Excuse me. The other future prevention thing is to involve appropriate other units for assistance in doing those searches. The business technology unit, property and evidence, the PIMS administrator, all of us are well versed in how to search in different ways to locate items that may be associated with a wrong case. Basically exhaust all possibilities before forming conclusions. Training on how to use the system and how it works, continuing training on how to use the system and how it works, and then retraining. Again, this system came into play in June of 2018. The situation occurred in November of 2018, and we went from a system that was known for nearly 30 years to a brand new system that was not well known, and a new process of officers documenting their own evidence before submission that had never been done before in 30 years in our department. So a combination of situations led to this evidence being under the wrong case number. And the bottom line for prevention is ask questions. If something isn't as you believe it should be, ask questions and follow up. And I think those were the things that are preventable types of things, or at least solutions to when we're looking for something that may be misplaced. You can advance the slide, please. So in summary, the situation presented at number one, it's not something new. This is something that we deal with on a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Items can be entered under a wrong case number, and the sooner we know that that has happened, the sooner we can begin searching and ultimately find those things and link them to the correct case. The reason is not something new. Human error, lack of focus, a need to slow down and double check your work. There are ways to search for items considered missing, being able to reach out to resources that are available for you. And this error can be corrected if and when it's discovered. And that's the key, is that if we know that the item came in, it can be corrected if we know soon enough so that we can employ those resources in order to find those things. Next slide, please. So at this point, if you have further questions, I'd be happy to try to address them. I know you wanted to focus on that particular case, so hopefully that was helpful with an explanation for you.
Chair, you are muted.
Well, great. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. No, I was just saying thank you, Ms. Hammerberg, for that overview for us. And are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Pineau?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Hammerberg, for giving us that presentation and spending a bit of your evening with us to help us better understand the context. I was kind of surprised to, one of the first questions I had written down was, how frequent do you see this type of error come up? And I'm glad you kind of answered it before I had the time to ask it. But it's kind of concerning to see that you say that this is a regular thing. And since you have so much experience, I heard Crystal PD, Minnesota Association of Property and Evidence, right? Can you give us an idea of, in your other experiences, or maybe even within the Minneapolis Police Department, what improvements have you seen, both internally in your job, but also either at Crystal or within other entities that we might be able to learn about, or the police department might be able to implement and improve this process? I get human error exists, but are there other ways that we could kind of make it easier?
If I had the answer to make it easier, I'd probably be a millionaire and not working for the city any longer. When I say that it happens on a weekly to monthly basis, that's the frequency that I will get an email from an officer saying, I think I messed up. I think that I entered something under a wrong case number. Please help. And so I can go into the system with the information provided by the officer, do a search, locate the items, and make the correction so that the evidence and the case link together. Okay. When it comes to understanding how much property and evidence come in, again, reflect back to the CAD call, where in 12 hours there are over 415 police calls. And if you look at those police calls, not every call generates a written case by an officer. Not every written case generates evidence or property associated with it. On average, we take in about 375,000 different things every year from police officers in our department alone. And we have about 1.5 million things stored here in the warehouse. And so the ability to search by a variety of parameters to locate an item that may be connected to, maybe not connected to the correct case, we start to become very adept at making those connections. And again, I work in the world of numbers here in looking at a property number. Right now we're up to 6 digits in the property number, at 1,556, and then 3 more numbers, and to make sure that we keep them in numerical order, to make sure that we make sure that we're doing our due diligence to watch the numbers and not transpose them. At times, numbers do get transposed, and it's a matter of, as soon as we know, being able to jump on it, as opposed to allowing a lot of time to go by and then having to look backwards over months or years. We want to be able to look backwards over days or weeks. And that's, it unfortunately, the information put into a computer is only as good as the person entering it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And just so that way, like, I understand the rationale behind the disconnect between the CAD numbers that I assume are originally created via dispatch, right? Is that where
Correct.
the
That's
original
correct.
numbers start off?
Correct.
And the idea behind that is that there's just some time latency. It takes a while for that number to make its way over to the same sort of either software or universe where there is inventory. Is that the correct assumption that I'm making here?
Yes and no. The CAD is doing a numerical series of numbers. So it starts
Just the
with
next one and the next one.
next one with each police call. And when a police call results in a report that's being taken and evidence that's being attached to that report, you still have to look through that list to get the right number to write your report, because the officer puts in the case number they are using from the CAD into the records management system where they write their police report. So from the dispatcher to the squad car CAD device, then usually an officer will frequently write it down by hand in a notebook. They will go back to a desk workstation, and then from the notebook, they will type in the case number into the records management system. And so in this situation, if the officer in the squad car looked at the number and transposed it and wrote it on their handwritten note and then went and sat at a computer, that's where the problem exists. The CAD does not fill into the records management system. That connection isn't there, and that's more of something that would need to be addressed by our business technology unit. That wouldn't be something that I could really address very well.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Commissioner McGuire?
I was wondering if there is any type of kind of audit that happens at any like regular interval for perhaps a PIMS number that gets entered that never ends up getting connected to any sort of case, as a way to catch maybe something that doesn't end up connected to a case.
That again is something that our business technology unit would be able to answer better than I could. I know that audits are done, but I don't know at what frequency or to what degree those are conducted. So the business technology unit and Commander Travis Glampy would have to kind of feed in on that one. I don't have that answer.
And I have one other question that might also be outside of your realm of experience. It sounds like when they are caught, it's because an investigator gets assigned to a case and is looking at it actively. Do you know if like a case investigation could be, for lack of a better term, dormant for any period of time? So maybe an investigator wouldn't be assigned immediately, or just, there might be even a case number assigned, but no one's looking at the evidence because they're not looking at it actively.
That is a possibility. When the cases are generated, they are routed to the various investigative units, and the lieutenant in charge of the investigative unit reviews the cases and then makes case assignments. So some cases are assigned to an investigator. Some cases are unassigned and lay dormant. Some cases are redlined or closed because they don't have enough evidence to proceed, or they don't have a complete case to proceed. And so there are a variety of I guess, benchmarks to use for each one of those levels. But yes, a case can be assigned, or a case can lay dormant, or a case can be closed as redline.
Thank you.
Commissioner Abdi, did you still have a question?
I did, thank you. So because you said that this happens so often, is there anything that like your office can do to support the officers to kind of like keep it from happening? I mean, I don't know what that would look like, because it sounds like it could get fixed if they come forward, or is there things that like we could add, or you guys could add to PIMS to try to like keep that from happening, or has that been talked about at all?
I don't know to what degree it's been discussed. I do know that on a daily basis, I look at all of the evidence that's listed on the intake screen, because we can see all evidence that's listed on the intake screen. And when something sits on the intake screen for more than a few days, I start looking into the case to see if, number one, there's been a duplicate entry of evidence, because sometimes that happens. And I start questioning officers. Have you submitted this? Where is this item? And so I try to be proactive on our end for the intake items that we see. Okay. And right now I cleaned things up from, the oldest was February 12th is what I was working on today. And I had 4 items from February that were outstanding, and we were trying to track down and account for. And then the next oldest item was from just this past Friday, the 5th of March. So it's not uncommon for something to be listed as on the intake list and it be sitting at a precinct in one of the temporary evidence lockers in a lieutenant's inbox, because it's a video or audio that they're reviewing before they submit it to us. So there are a variety of reasons, but we are trying to actively pursue items that appear on our intake list, but yet have not come into our custody. Excuse me.
Commissioner Jacobson.
I just want to say thank you, Ms. Hammerberg, for coming and speaking and sharing with how the whole process of property and evidence works, especially as it pertains to this case. I have been a dispatcher that generates the cases, and then the case goes to, the officer, and the officer goes to the property evidence and the records technicians and all that stuff. I've worked as a records technician, and I've spent some part-time in property and evidence. So it is a very, very strenuous process that involves a lot of hands, a lot of different steps, and many, many eyes. And I think that to what Commissioner Pino and Abdi were saying, that it's a matter of just making sure that all eyes are on it, because like I said, it goes through many, many different steps, and you have the sergeants who need to review those cases. You have your records technicians who too need to be reviewing those cases and making sure all the numbers align, because they can get mixed up. And when you're looking at numbers numerous times like that, and you're working late at night, a lot of things can happen. So I guess it's just a matter of enforcing and making sure that everybody takes a look at it when it comes on your desk. Everybody takes a look at it so things are caught sooner than later.
Thank you for that. And you're right in that the officer will write the report. There is a supervisory review to some degree, and I don't know how closely that is looked at. And then there's the review by the investigative lieutenant if the cases are assigned. So there are a couple of points where something should have been recognized. An item of evidence not showing up would be a big thing. And had we recognized it sooner, we could have corrected it sooner so it wouldn't have come under review. Oh, sorry, you're muted again.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Just for clarification, I believe you've stated a few times that as soon as an issue like this is noticed, that action is taken, like almost immediately, that you begin to solve the problem. Okay, then I'm wondering why the investigator, in the PowerPoint, it states that the investigator didn't ask for assistance immediately when it was noticed evidence wasn't showing up with the case, that assumptions were made, but nothing was done. So could you clarify that for me?
First, I did not speak with the investigator or the lieutenant or the officer on this case. So I, pardon me, I read your report and I read the case so that I had an understanding of the case. And so I'm also making assumptions that this, again, is 2.5 years ago. So my assumption is that others made assumptions, and I guess we all know what that can do. So I was trying to piece together what likely happened and what possible solutions there are.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you. Ms. Hammerberg, do you know, was the chain of custody broken here, or were you able to sort of maintain that chain because you were able to figure out that the numbers were transposed?
The chain of custody was not broken in this case. The evidence did arrive in our custody, and it did get cataloged and stored correctly based on the number that we had. It was when, excuse me, it was when we've discovered that the case number was incorrect that we could then go back, pull up the evidence, make the correction of the case number, and link it to the case. So chain of custody was never broken.
Okay.
It was always under our control.
Okay.
And so maybe I asked the wrong question. I guess the question I should have asked is, did you catch it not immediately, but did you catch it in time so that it was able to be associated with a criminal case, or did the criminal case have to go without this piece of evidence?
The investigator in the case said they were pursuing criminal charges without the physical evidence, and my understanding is the case is dormant, and so it hasn't been closed, but it hasn't been actively pursued, and now the evidence is associated with it. So if the case were to be pursued, the evidence would be present.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All my fellow commissioners have asked all the questions that I wanted to ask, and I'm in such great company here. But Ms. Heimerberg, I really just wanted to thank you for your time and your service coming to us today, but most importantly, serving the city's citizens of Minneapolis. I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any more questions?
I do have one more quick one, just following up from Commissioner Sarah's question about just the timeline of all of this and how the evidence is part of the prosecutors or just about the larger court case, right? Once an administrative error like this ends up being rectified in some sort of way, is there some sort of notification system or how do people know, the lawyers at the end of the day on either side of the courtroom know whether or not, oh, hey, there's this new bit of information? That's something completely new to me, and I was wondering if that somehow provides a little bit more detail to what Commissioner Sarah was asking.
So as I understand how all the systems work, number one, when the correction of the evidence was made from the incorrect case number to the correct case number, through the PIM system, it routes to the investigator.
Okay.
So the investigator gets a notification. What they choose to do with that is their process, and and so I don't know how they inform the prosecuting attorney or others.
Yeah, but information got out in some
information
way.
Yes, information was routed to the investigator.
That's what I assumed, but I just wanted to say, because boy, would it sound, like a tragedy if you did all that work, you got it to be connected with the right case, and because it went dormant, then all of a sudden no one knows that there's physical evidence there. But you're just telling me now that there is some sort of system in place that alerts that, saying, hey, even on this dormant case, we have evidence.
We have evidence, yes.
Okay.
And also, for clarification, I know that on TV everyone talks about statute of limitations and how long things are held. Excuse me. The statute of limitations for various cases can be 3 years all the way up to indefinite. So depending on the type of case, the statute of limitations will dictate when charges can be filed. And the statute of limitations says basically that for a case that has no suspect, no evidence, or there aren't any viable leads, we have to hold the evidence for a specific period of time. Once there's a suspect and there's evidence and there are viable leads, then the clock is ticking and charges have to be filed within that period of time. So for instance, a misdemeanor type of a crime, the statute of limitations is 3 years. So if Joe Blow is arrested for any misdemeanor crime, the police department and an investigator has 3 years from the date of that crime to file charges. Now, the most crimes that, if you look at statistics, most of the crimes committed are misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, and that is, my estimate is 80% of the workload. 20% of the workload is the felony level crime, and the statute of limitations for those is 7 years or longer. And so, depending on the type of case, for instance, this case, the charges could sit dormant for this 2.5-year period of time, but because there is evidence, the case can be reopened and charged before the statute of limitations tolls. Does that make sense? Okay. So it exists. So things exist as long as no charges have been filed to this point, and it falls within that statutory amount of time, charges still can be filed.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Hammerberg? Okay, seeing as how we have no further questions, Ms. Hammerberg, I want to thank you again for taking your time and coming and sharing your expertise with us. It was very interested, very informative. And just on the behalf of the commission, we want to say thank you to you. So I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report, please.
Thank you very much for your time, and have a good rest of your week.
You too. Yep.
Thank you.
Our next order of business this evening is the regular presentation of case summaries and synopses. The 3 cases to be presented were selected at the February meeting, and we will take questions and open the floor to discussion after each of the case summaries is presented. Will these be shared on the screen, I believe? I'll begin with case summary number 3.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to present your case summaries tonight. So case number 3, you can see that it was alleged that the officers detained the complainant's brother outside of his home. He had some force concerns that you can see here, saying he was thrown to the ground. So the intake investigators located both the PIMS, which is the Police Information Management System, is what that stands for. That is where the police reports are stored. So the police report showed that it was a person with a gun call. And then if we could scroll down a little bit, the body-worn camera review shows here that the officers were holding their service weapons, but the holster of the weapon before interacting with the subject. The officers stood with a distance between themselves and the subject is handcuffed by officers and walked towards a squad car. According to the investigator, there was no use of force. This is intake investigators, by the way, and I know in the training we covered, just a refresher, there's a difference between a case investigator who investigates an open case and then a intake investigator. So the intake investigator here noted that there was no use of force observed before or during the length of detention. So after reviewing the case, going through the body camera, going through the police report, going through the VisiNet report, which is the GPS report, the officer didn't have their body camera on at the appropriate time, and so they were sent to coaching for a body camera violation.
Okay. Any discussion or further questions? Yes, Commissioner Sarah.
Thank you. So how were they able to view the body camera video for the event if he didn't or she didn't have their body camera on?
So they did have their body camera on, they just didn't have it on for the duration of the event. So a lot of the body camera complaints, like if they miss something significant, we send it through to investigation. So a lot of times it's like they just didn't turn it on fast enough, so we might miss like the beginning of the interaction, and that's a violation because they should have it on for the entire interaction. And so when we see that they've missed like 30 seconds or 20 seconds, that's still something that we send to coaching because you need to have it on.
So in this case, the officer didn't have it on at the beginning of interacting with this person?
Right. So usually what we see, like on a case like this, because I can't talk about more specifics that are there, at a case like this, normally what you'll see is when the body camera starts rolling, you'll see 2 people talking to each other, but it's silent for 30 seconds because there's a 30-second buffer. And so we see that there's already people talking to each other. And that's the cue that, nope, you should have had that on, when you were walking up, you should have turned it on when you were. So if they don't, if they're already engaged with someone, you're too late. Even if I didn't miss anything critical, you still need to go back to talk to your supervisor because you didn't understand that you needed to turn it on earlier.
So my second question arising from that information is that it sounds like it's possible that they did have some sort of interaction, whatever. Use of force, not use of force, like whatever, but some kind of interaction before the body camera was turned on. So why was this closed out?
It wasn't closed out. It was sent to coaching so they could sit down to talk to their supervisor about why the body camera should be turned on and when it should be turned on.
The coaching, but that would not be communicated to the complainant, correct?
We have a form letter that goes out to complainants that gives them as much as we can. I feel like we're going to have this discussion a lot, which is totally fine.
Right.
And I understand that.
And the letter says it's closed, no discipline, and provides no details. Is that right, Director Jafar?
No, that is not correct.
What does the letter say?
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm just going to hit a timeout here. I think the purpose for me coming to discuss the cases and answer questions for you is so that you can decide what you would like to look into more, what you would like to do a deep dive on for. What I'm not gonna do is get engaged in this like back and forth of like micro analyzing the cases, right? Because what I can provide to you is in the summary. And I'm sorry that you don't feel like that's enough. I really understand that, but that is the state law. I can't go into this deep dive. they do get letters that say, in cases like yours, it is possible that someone may go sit with a supervisor, because that's all I can tell them. And I don't get to set those rules. And that, like, what you have in the summaries is as much as we're allowed to give you. And I've got Joel Fussy from the city attorney's office, who could certainly add some commentary onto that about the case summaries and what we can provide and we can't provide, if that's helpful, Joel.
Okay, well, before the city attorney speaks, it is conceivable that before this officer's camera was activated, he could very well have done what the complainant accused him of. So it's my concern that all he's doing is being coached on not having his camera on soon enough. That is conceivable, is it not?
Okay, again, like
well,
we went through a 2-hour training last week, right? Like, we are here to support and help you do the oversight work that you would like to do, right? So I don't know how productive this discussion is. Like, I would like to work with all of you to discuss the case summaries and see what you can do here. And I am having a hard time with this interaction, because I don't know how that's supposed to help us. I see that Director Reed from the Civil Rights Department has his hand up.
Well, I also see that Vice Chair Abdi has had her hand up. So, Vice Chair Abdi, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And I just want to also just speak my concerns as well, is that if the person didn't have the body cam on before, then that there is enough time for like whatever the complainant said that was going to happen. Therefore, I guess I'm concerned on, we are seeing these body cam violations that are going to coaching. So what does a body cam violation that goes to discipline look like? Because what we're seeing is that things that should have been considered discipline, if there's a difference. And I'm hearing your frustration about the ability to not have this conversation, but this is what you're here for, is to answer our questions. And I'm concerned that although your presence you believe is helpful, it's not, because we're not giving our answers. And
that's fine. If you don't think it's helpful for me or somebody from OPCR to be here to answer the questions, I'm fine with that. This is your commission. You are an independent body. You get to run things how you would like to run things. I'm here to provide whatever context I can provide to you. But when you're asking me like very specific questions about cases that I can't disclose, I can definitely hear your concerns. I can't say anything in response. So that's really difficult for me. So I'm in a really tough spot here. And I know that you all appreciate that and you understand that. But like, you know, I basically have to sit here and I can't say anything to you. That's the law. I'd really like the law to be changed. I'd love to give you the entire case file and let you read the whole thing. That would be what I would like to do. And if I did that, I would violate the law. So I can't do that. And so I know that you're frustrated. I'm very sorry for that. But there really isn't much I can do here other than say, okay, I hear you. Talk to your state legislators, talk to the elected officials. Like, they're the ones that can help you with this. You know, even providing the case summaries was a stretch for what we could do. I mean, this was something that wasn't allowed to be done. And so, you know, it's nice that we can give you these, because otherwise you wouldn't have anything. And I know that that is not what a lot of you want to hear. And that's not why you signed up to be on the commission. And, you know, frankly, when I started this job, I didn't realize that the data practices rules were so stringent, and we're completely surprised by it. And so, you know, I'm not in a dissimilar situation, and I'm not trying to be unhelpful, but there are limits to what I can say. And so I will give you what I can, and I know that's not what you want to hear.
If I could just, this is Frank Reek. If I could just step in just for a minute. I know I'm sort of stepping out of turn, but my interest is in the furtherance of this discussion. But there is only so much that we can give without violating the law. I mean, we've got to be very careful here. There's a line that we can't cross. And in order to support what you were all doing here, and every night we meet to look at these cases, we have to observe that. Now, the city attorney is here to help define exactly what the law is on this. It's not something that we're making up. It's not something that we're using as a foil to keep the facts from you. But it is something that we do have to observe. And so that law has to be considered and it has to be followed.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Director Reed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I have lost track of whose hand was up first, but I believe it was Commissioner Sarah.
I'm also a lawyer. I've also reviewed the law, and it is possible to give more information than we are receiving today. And for example, just simply asking what happened, not names, not dates, not demographics, just simply asking what happened is totally in bounds. And if something slips into being private data, like perhaps a date or a location, we are allowed to view that under open meeting law and data practices, and there's a way to do it so that it's protected and that that data is kept private and not part of the open meeting. What we can do is close the meeting, and there's actually rules in place in our PCOC procedural rules to allow us to do that. And so moving on from that, I think it's appropriate to look at this case, and we're simply asking questions about how it was investigated. This is not a personal attack. We're just simply asking questions. And one of the questions is it possible that something happened before the body camera video was turned on? And today we've learned that that is true, that that is possible. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Another question I had is, was the complainant investigated? Or excuse me, interviewed? Thank you.
Director Jafar, your microphone is off. If you,
Sorry. So Joel Fussy is here from the city attorney's office. I don't even make those decisions because that isn't my call. And I can't answer those questions because you're getting into the details of the case, and that is not information I can provide you. I would feel more comfortable with Joel answering that question because I don't get to make that determination. I'm not a city attorney. I work in the civil rights department.
Madam Chair, I think your microphone is muted, but if I might.
Again. No, I was just saying, Attorney Fussy, that I would appreciate that if you would address Commissioner Sarah's question.
Sure, and I can start by saying I, again, fully understand that different agencies and different people can come to different conclusions. I can say that the city attorney's office has examined and issued an opinion regarding the coaching issue that I think you've all seen back in September. I think it might be addressed even in a future meeting. I can also say that the city attorney's office would disagree with Commissioner Sarah's assertion that your commission is able to delve into, whether it's in a public meeting or a closed meeting, the investigatory file that is otherwise classified as private. I think I addressed this question a couple months ago, but it's the position of our office. And again, no one has to concur with that. I'm just saying what the position of our office is. And that's that when the OPCR was created and the ordinance was drafted, it was done so in an intentionally bifurcated manner in which the review panels would be the investigatory body and your panel or your commission would be a policy review commission and a policy advisory commission, and not have be charged with authority to review private investigatory data. Nothing has changed since that ordinance has been adopted, and therefore, whether it's in a public or a private meeting or a closed meeting, this commission simply does not have the authority to review data that would be classified as private. That would include data associated with a case that was resolved by being sent to coaching. I know also that the staff of the OPCR endeavors very, very earnestly to provide you with as much allowable summary and aggregate information, I believe is the term that's used in the law and the case law regarding these individual cases, but not with the intention to drill down into necessarily the outcome of the individual cases, but in intention and intentional proposition to allow the commission to examine and look for things on the macro level in terms of policy and policing. I think this is what the former Chair Brown and the former Vice Chair spoke of pretty eloquently and at length in last month's training session. And so those are the opinions. That's the position that the city attorney's office that I work for has taken with regard to the authority of your commission and the data practices law. And I think that it's being very carefully followed and has been very carefully followed by the staff. I also, as Director Jafar has said, I can understand that people have strong opinions about this and may not agree with, the pronouncements or the opinions of the city attorney's office. I believe that they have been put forward forthright and honestly, and that is the position of the city attorney's office with regard to these matters. Thank you.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
If anyone has no objections, I'm just going to leave my mic open because I just keep forgetting to turn it back on. Okay. I believe Commissioner McGuire, you were up next. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, but please go ahead.
I don't know what order, but thank you. I'll ask my question. Well, I think one thing that's going to be a continual theme in the complaints is we're going to see some alarming information that doesn't seem to be addressed kind of in the form of discipline or later on. And so I'm kind of interested, maybe I didn't learn I should have asked this about the process before, because what we have here is allegations of something that happened that is not corroborated by body-worn camera evidence. Can you speak to what happens in the review when we have like I don't want to say it's uncorroborated evidence, but basically something that's been alleged that usually should have been filmed and is not filmed. And is there some sort of weight given to different testimony or different types of evidence in the process? I think that would help us understand at least a little more why we're going to keep seeing these inconsistencies, if you're able to speak to that.
Okay. I think what I can say is that, so we always type for you what the complainant says, always verbatim, even if that's not what's observed in the body camera, if that makes sense. And in a lot of cases, there's different perceptions of what goes on, and the truth is usually somewhere in the middle of everybody who's interviewed. But the body camera provides an objective lens with the audio and the video. So in some cases, there are things observed in the body camera that don't amount to a policy violation. So the complainant says one thing happened, but when you watch it, from the vantage point of being able to see everything that's going on, that might not be accurate, if that makes sense, Commissioner McGuire. So, we can't give you every detail of what we're seeing in the body camera. We can give you the high level summary that we are giving you and try and give you as much information as we can.
Can I follow up with one other question? So is there a way to investigate something that doesn't appear on the body camera, or are we relying on body camera footage to make a determination?
No, there's a way to investigate things that don't appear on body camera, and when things that don't appear on body camera that are alleged, depending on the case, it just depends on the case. There are definitely cases that go to investigation where someone alleges something, we can't see it on body camera for whatever reason. It might have been recorded, but we still can't see it. Those are cases that go forward. But right now, in the vast majority of cases, there is at least body-worn camera of part or all of the incident.
Are you satisfied, Commissioner McGuire?
I don't want to take up too much time.
Commissioner Jacobson, please.
Thank you. So I think the first thing that I want to make sure that we don't do is that we don't kill the messenger. I think that what might be helpful is to ask to sit down with the chief and internal affairs and ask them if we can have like a full review or how they conduct their investigations in addition to the body cam violations. I understand it can be frustrating for all of us here in the group to not get the answers that we want. But the thing is that the person that we have before us who's helping us follow up with the case is not able to give us necessarily the answers that we want. And as a commission, we actually have the ability to request, Madam Chair, you have the ability to request a sit down with the chief or internal affairs and ask them what happens once that body cam, that person is coached and for not having their body cam. What happens after that? Does internal affairs come in? Does internal affairs question their partner and ask their partner what they've seen? Does internal affairs question the victims? I mean, because we're not going to get answers about specific cases due to data practices, but what we can get answers for is how is it supposed to go? What is the routine? What can we change? What policies can we implement that we can request that they push forward with how to handle things going forward? And I think that that's where we need to start because we want to build relationships and get some more transparency so that we can make changes that are going to better our communities. We can't change every single specific case, but we have the ability to change policies that affect a lot of cases.
Thank you. Vice Chair Abdi, did you still have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sylvester?
Thank you so much, Director Jafar. Thank you so much for being here. I guess I'm still learning this, so please, like, let me know if this is something that you can't tell me. But a person with a gun is a pretty serious response for NPD. And I can't imagine this one officer who was disciplined was the only officer that was involved in this, which tells me that there were probably multiple body cameras at play here. Did the investigators at all look at multiple body cameras when they were investigating this?
So in cases like this, when there are more than one body camera, they watch all of the body cameras. And they watch all the body cameras first to get the incident. So once they find the incident timestamp, then they locate all of the other officers' body cameras and they watch all the angles because we want to make sure we're looking at the best angle of the situation.
Okay, so if that happened and we have multiple officers with multiple body camera angles, and am I correct in assuming that the one piece of discipline that came out of this complainant was coaching for one officer not turning on their body camera quick enough?
And coaching isn't discipline, but the result
I'm so sorry,
was
yeah.
an officer not turning on their body camera. And just a reminder of what the person actually complained about was use of force. That's what they complained about. And so that piece of it was captured on body camera, as the summary states.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Do we have any more questions for Ms. Jafar or Attorney Fussy or anyone else to do with this case? Commissioner Sarah.
Your microphone is muted.
I'm gonna leave mine on. Okay, so I'm still a little confused about what happened. Was their body cam sort of leading up to the interaction, or was there not?
I can't answer the specifics on when their body camera. What you can see, though, is that the investigator that watched it detailed for you in the summary the entire use of force incident. I believe in the summary, that's the way I'm reading it, and that piece of it that the person complained about was actually viewed on the body camera.
Commissioner Sparks, I see that you have your hand up.
Yes. Commissioner Sylvester asked my question, and I think it was answered. So thank you, Director. But as long as I've got the floor, I just want to say thank you to you and your staff for compiling these cases in such fine shape. We appreciate all the effort and appreciate the transparency that we're getting. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Chair Abdi?
Yes, so I just have just a clarifying question, so that it is possible to do more investigation on a complaint if it wasn't on the body cam. You said that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then, so in the complaint, when it says thrown to the ground and the officer put his knee into his back, that sounds pretty severe. So are you able to speak at what point is that not going to investigation and just coaching? Like,
so that's what the allegation was, but I would direct your attention to the investigator's summary for you of what they actually saw on the body camera.
Lisa, can you put that back up on our screens? I just want to make sure that we have this correct. Okay, there is no use of force observed before or during the length of detention, but that doesn't say anything.
So I think, Madam Chair, if you read
Yes.
before, the officer stands with distance between themselves and the subject before eventually walking towards them. The subject is then handcuffed by the officers. So my reading of what has been provided to you is that they did not observe a knee on a back during that interaction. And, you know, again, you're being handcuffed. I would imagine in a situation like that, it's hard to know what's happening to you. You're probably feeling sensations in your body. It's difficult, right? So even though the complainant says, yes, I think this happened to me, upon watching the video, no use of force was observed before or during the length of detention. Now, the individual didn't complain about the body camera. That's just something we found. And whenever we find them, we make sure that if they have not had a violation like that before, that they sit down with a supervisor to understand you need to turn that body camera on right away. Even if we see them walking towards an incident, even if they're walking towards an incident and it looks like they were already getting out of the car and it wasn't fast enough, we send them for that 10 seconds.
Okay, in the interest of time, if we have no further questions or anything else to discuss about this particular case summary, I suggest we move on to case summary number 8, I believe is our next one.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'd like to make a motion with this particular case summary. I would like to move that this is sent back for further investigation, either to the chief or joint supervisors or whomever, and to ask about what happened leading up to before apparently the body camera was engaged. That might be an interview with the complainant or an interview with people on the scene, whatever. I think it wasn't sufficient in this case. And what I've noticed, we're here to observe patterns and practices, and the patterns and practice that I have observed is that cases are sent to coaching, the lowest common denominator is sort of sussed out of a complaint, and details aren't fully investigated. And that's what I'm noticing. And coaching is just used sort of as a knee-jerk reaction. So I think sufficient investigation was not done here.
Okay.
At least based on the information we have.
I'm at a loss. Could the city clerk please direct me?
Madam Chair, if I might.
There was just an accident right outside my house. Let's continue on through this. I'm sorry, it just completely took me off guard.
Madam Chair, this is Attorney Fussy. If I could address the motion that's on the floor.
Yes.
Thank you. I would advise the commission that it's outside of the scope of the commission's authority to direct the investigatory actions of the OPCR or the police department.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat?
It would be the advice of the city attorney that it is outside the scope of this commission's authority to direct the investigatory actions of the OPCR or the commission, and therefore I don't think that Commissioner Sayre's motion would be proper or valid.
Okay, then with that said, moving on to case summary 8. Clerk Brock, could you please put that up on our screens for us?
Okay, so this one is a vehicle pursuit case. This one was sent to us via the Pursuit Review Committee. I think I've mentioned them before, but just as a recap, in case any of you don't remember, the Minneapolis Police Department has a committee set up of people who review all the pursuits and determine if things were should be referred because they resulted in a you know, they either were not a pursuit that should have happened, period. They result in an accident, something like that. This one, so the age of the complaint, so they have their own backlog at times of the Pursuit Review Committee, and this one got to us outside of jurisdiction. That being said, if there are serious cases that are outside our jurisdiction, Internal Affairs doesn't have that rule, so we just refer the cases there. However, with this one, you can see that what had happened was that they got a call about someone who was slumped over in a driver's seat. The officers approached the vehicle and pulled in front of the vehicle in order to check the welfare of the passenger. The squad vehicle approaches, the other vehicle flees the scene. The officer initiated pursuit and it was terminated so that they just, you know, stopped the pursuit. It's also noted the officer's body-worn camera was activated late. So the suspect's stolen vehicle stopped at the side of the road. The individual was observed slumped over and possible maybe having a medical emergency. The vehicle fled and then pursued, but then it stopped. And upon termination, the last known direction of the travel of the suspect vehicle was undated on the radio. A big reason why this wasn't referred to Internal Affairs is because the pursuit lasted 20 seconds. And when it's older than 270 days, there's just not a lot you can do with it at that point. We do take cases, even if they're out of jurisdiction. We do have an internal SharePoint folder of people who've been like referred to us, even if there isn't a policy violation found, if they're outside that year period, just so if the person does get in a pursuit or accident within the year, you can say, hey, look, here's a prior. We keep records of all that. So those ones are referred into a SharePoint folder. But this one, again, it was a 20-second pursuit that was older than 270 days. And so we ended up closing the case because of lack of jurisdiction.
I think that the main concern that the commission has is that this is another case of body-worn cameras being activated late, that they're not being properly utilized. And if what our role is to do is to find patterns, then I believe that this fits a pattern.
And we don't have jurisdiction to handle cases that are that old. We just don't. It's actually in our ordinance. So I can't do anything with those cases, even send them for coaching or anything else.
Okay. I mean, I wasn't necessarily asking you to investigate this or include this in anything. I'm just saying that even though oh my God, you know what, you guys, I have to get off my phone. I mean, I have to get off this call. I apologize. They're outside shooting. I'm in danger and I need to go. Thank you. I apologize. And Vice Chair Abdi, could you please take over for the rest of the meeting?
And Vice Chair, you'll have to activate your microphone.
Vice Chair, if I could interject, I will email you the script.
Okay.
For the rest of the meeting right now.
Thank you.
If I may, Vice Chair Abdi, just to help fill time, I hope Chair Jackson is safe and taking care of herself and those around her. But before she left, she raised a good point that I think we should focus on. The point of these synopses is to intake information, and that in a lot of ways can be really helpful. Even look at what we did today in our earlier part of the meeting. We intook information from Synopses earlier in the year. We started asking questions. We had someone come and present a little bit more information, and all of a sudden we find out that it is a frequent occurrence that evidence has some sort of administrative issue. Hypothetically, we can jump in and say, hey, well, why don't we take a closer look at that from a systematic point of view? If Chair Jackson, as I would agree with her, mentioned that there is a trend of body-worn cameras being turned on too late, and yes, they go into coaching. Coaching is a completely different type of argument that we are definitely in the midst of, but focusing on the procedural aspect of this, body-worn cameras are being turned on later than what they should in policy. We could take a look at that hypothetically. If someone is interested in that, we can have that sort of momentum build and look into what is the practice of body-worn cameras. You know, what is the ideal? How often is that ideal not being upheld? And what are some ways that we can make it easier for these body-worn cameras to be turned on at the times that they should be turned on? If someone's really interested in that thing, and I can clearly see that there is interest in that sort of thing, then at that sort of high policy level, in my opinion, I think that that's something that we could start asking about, rather than in the discrete instances of why not in this case. Instead, let's bring it up to the next level and say, you know, why in general? And start thinking about those things from a systems point of view, rather than an individual case-by-case point of view. And I'd be happy to yield my time to Director Jafar.
Commissioner Pino, yeah, that's a great point. And I wanted to let you know there's actually already body camera audits that are state mandated. Plus, you have a quality assurance unit that is run by a commander who is audit trained. And so there are regular audits running of body camera use. And if that's something that's of interest to you, you know, that's certainly something they actually present publicly to the city council when the audits are done. So we can, you know, find a way to get you that information. I know there's recordings of the previous audits, but that is an issue that is both running on the, you know, the city auditing side, and we assist in that body camera auditing process with our, but it's a bigger effort with more people watching a lot of camera footage to screen for exactly that, when are cameras turned on and off. But the quality assurance unit in MPD, that has been their really big push, is to make sure that cameras are turned on. And if you look at the trajectory from when they started quality assurance, the, you know, compliance rate with like turning on the camera and when they're turning on the camera has actually gone up pretty significantly because they've been audited.
That's great to hear. It's still technically my time. If you have the script by now, Commissioner Abdi, I'd be happy to yield the rest of my time.
I do. Commissioner Jacobson?
I just wanted to add I thought there was something about software. There was a specific software that worked with the body-worn cameras that automatically activated once they checked in on a call. I don't know if Minneapolis opted for that specific software. I know there were different contractors and different software that they were looking at based on money and different things like that. So I don't know which one the city of Minneapolis went with, but I could have swore there was a software out there that automatically activated the cameras when they checked in on the call.
They do have in their squad car something that when the lights and sirens go on, that they automatically activate the MVR, the mobile video recording. They did just get new body cameras, so that's a good question. Also, the policy recently changed, if you didn't see that they have to turn it on for every interaction. So the history of the body camera policy was that it started with, it had exemptions for when to turn it off, and then you were allowed to turn it off when you were like discussing something with your partner, which we raised concerns about because we couldn't see things we needed to in cases. We were bringing people in, exactly like you said, like we were missing pieces, so we just opened cases and bring people in. The policy has been changed, again, not that long ago, for every interaction. So that changes things too. But Commissioner Jacobson, that's a good question, because the latest software iteration, and because we're all remote now, normally when they would get the new body camera, we would go in for a training right away to see the equipment. But we're not doing things like that right now. But that's certainly a question that I can ask about what capabilities does it have. I don't think it has the automatic. But I do know for MVR video that is there when they flip the lights and sirens on. That video in some of the squad cars is now starting. So I'm a fan of anything automated, because the less they have to think about it and just go do the call, the easier it's going to be for everybody.
Just
Madam
one more
Vice
thing
Chair.
too. Sorry, I also wanted to note too that I do believe that there is also a retention policy with how long that video will be retained and how much can go into the cloud. So there's always someone who might say the reason why they activate it at this time or they don't activate it in these cases is because of the retention and how much storage the cloud will hold. So that's something that we want to look at too, and that might mean us looking at that policy and saying how can we advocate for our police department to have more cloud storage for these videos so that they can start these videos as soon as they get to the call, and it can go through the duration of the call, and we don't have to worry about, there being a storage issue and it being erased, or they can only activate it at this certain time because they only have this amount of time. That's something that we want to look into, and we want to keep in mind too that all of these things that we want and that we want to make better for the city of Minneapolis does require funding. So we have to look at that. And if that's something that we want our police department to be better and we want these policies to change it for our community to make sure that we have the things that we need to support our community, we also have to think about money. And I know that's a huge issue right now. With giving money to the police departments and where they actually use it. Do they put it to good use? Does the use benefit what we need and what we want? So that's when we're asking for these things, we want to keep in mind that particular piece too.
Commissioner Jacobson, just to follow up, I think that one concern from our office when it was great, when body cameras were started, I started this job before there was body camera. It's a big difference in doing this type of work with the footage, was the storage space. We were concerned about how little storage space had been allocated, and I know it was just a start, but other comparable jurisdictions have ended their body camera programs because they have run out of storage space, cannot afford to pay for storage, and then the entire program goes away. So I don't think that's the case for Minneapolis, but it is it's one of those things that people just don't think about, but it's extremely important to make sure you have enough space, especially now that there's going to be a lot more footage because they are required to turn it on for all the interactions, which is great, but it has to be supported too.
And I'll add in here, from my understanding of the intersection of body-worn camera operation and funding, is that it's not normally a holistic endeavor in the sense that you get a funding for anything body camera related. It's often subdivided into the hardware, the software, the storage, and different qualifications for each of those three different things. So we're talking a very intricate aspect of policing instrument use really here, which I think if we wanted to commit an entire evening to, we probably could.
Okay, so is there anything else that anybody would like to mention about case 8, or should we move on? No? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Sparks.
Sorry about that. I was a little late, but I did have one question. I noticed in the complaint field, the last sentence, it's noted that the officer's body-worn camera was activated late, and I think that I've seen similar language in the complaint fields and other summaries. Is it in this particular summary, number 8? was that just noted by the investigation, or was that part of the original complaint? It seems like I've seen it go both ways, and we're not always sure.
You can bank on over 90% of the time it is our investigators flagging that as an issue.
Okay.
And a lot of times, the trend is that it's a very, very short amount of time. You're talking 10 seconds, 20 seconds, but again, not acceptable. We want people to be compliant. So that's why it's flagged. Now with this one, with the Pursuit Review Committee, they might have mentioned it. I just don't recall off the top of my head if they did or not, but they don't typically put things like that in the report. That's usually our people doing it.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. That was my question. That's all.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Can we pull up case 9 so we can go over it?
Okay, let's see. Okay, so case number 9, so this one ended up being referred to training. So in this one, the complaint, I think the overview, sorry, is not correct on this one. I didn't catch that before we sent it. So this is a different one, not a pursuit one. This actually had a complaint saying that the complainant, that they felt the officers were inappropriate in their conduct and treatment towards the complainant, that they was seeking support and looking to speak with officers concerning personal fears of being followed and harassed by others. This is an emotionally disturbed person's call. You may see that phrase shortened to EDP in a lot of police reports. So this man came into the precinct and was emotionally disturbed and then was transported to HCMC for evaluation. So on this one, you can see that there's a summary provided talking about the interaction between the complainant and the officers. This complainant was convinced that they were being followed. And the intake investigator who had viewed this one detailed what was happening in that interaction, and you can read it in detail. The interaction did end with medical personnel from HCMC becoming involved in the incident, and you can read that as well. The footage goes all the way until the complainant is admitted to HCMC. At the bottom, if we could scroll down a little bit, you can just see that this incident was referred to training for an assessment of the interaction with the emotionally disturbed person. So I just want to talk about a referral to training. So generally, there are cases that don't constitute a policy violation. So there won't be found that there was a policy violation. However, if it didn't rise to the level of a policy violation, but it might not really be how they're trained. So you're talking about the difference between a policy violation and what is a best practice, right? So in this one, and you can see the summary, that the officers' interactions on the body camera appear to be within policy. However, because we wanted to make sure that the officers were engaged in best practices during the entire call, without a policy violation, what are we left with? Because all of the consequences that you know about are related to policy violations. That's the root of the accountability system. Well, we built in another mechanism saying if something doesn't rise to the policy violation, why don't we have it referred to training for an assessment of the situation and see if the person might need to just come back in for more training or talk with someone in training about, was this the best way to handle it? Now, training can come back and tell us, we looked at it, we think it's within, the training parameters, and we think it's fine. Normally they'll come back to us on a lot of cases saying, okay, we're going to recommend that this person goes through this training again, goes through a special training that we set up for them, and we'll let you know when they're done. And that's typically how it goes. So it's another way to address something that might not be a policy violation, but could be a way to have people just comply with best practices, even if it's not a violation.
You just kind of had it. I could hear him right now saying, "I believe maroon and gold." So kind of my first taste of a lot of pride and just kind of the connection.
Someone's microphone is open. Ted, can you find out who that is for us?
Sorry, that was mine. Any other discussion about case 9? Commissioner Sparks?
Thanks. I just wanted to thank the Director Jafar for the additional information about how we can refer to training to make sure we're observing best practices if things are not a violation, but maybe we could do better. That sounds to me like a very appropriate use of training and in some ways coaching. I know that they're different terms in this context, but I think that's a good idea and should, in theory, contribute to people following the best practices. So thank you for that.
Sure thing.
Commissioner Pino?
Hello. I actually have a question more about generally the process of pulling the cases. I kind of always just had the given assumption that there was a certain timeline, or like we don't go further back than Y year when these cases are selected, and then lo and behold, earlier today we were looking at the end result of a case from 2018. So could you, one, just give us like just a little bit more detail of how these cases go about being picked, maybe just like at the wonky level of, is it randomized in any sort of way? Are we trying to get a solid distribution of certain things? But also, if it's of interest, is it possible to limit some of those parameters down to like, what about in the last year? Again, just something that I was thinking about throughout the whole meeting today.
So, Commissioner Pina, that's a good question. Remember that sometimes even if we get a case that may say it's, 2018 or something like that, at the time we opened it, it was still within the 270 days, and we just got notified a long time after. Like, not everyone files a complaint right away. Some of our complaints come in through lawsuits. If we get complaints through that pursuit review committee I mentioned, they have a huge volume and a small group of people just like us. Sometimes it can take a while to get to us. So that sometimes can explain why it looks. So it has to be closed cases. There's a random number generator. They generate the random numbers, pulling all the cases that are open. It's just a website that's a random number generator. And so that is literally how it's pulled. If you only want to see cases that were closed in the last year, I'm sure that's, something we could do. I would have to check. To make sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious, really.
Yeah. No. That makes sense. Just remember that sometimes,
closed in the last year could be opened, 10
Yes.
years ago. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and remember, even if it was closed, if it is something that floated through like the grievance arbitration process, for example, that could be a much older case that took an additional year to go through that. So the date issue can be tricky. Just because of the nature of things, but it's not that we couldn't do that. We could certainly look into doing something like that if you're interested.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner McGuire.
I have a question, and I'm sorry if we keep asking things that you can't really comment on. I just seeing that the complainant was put into handcuffs and placed into custody. It sounds like, is there, I guess, I know you probably can't talk about the specifics of this one. Is there a review of whether there was like an unlawful arrest made? Would that be in the purview of your review? And would that be possibly, if there was, would that be a policy violation or are you able to give it, I guess, shed any light on what happens when an unlawful arrest is made? Because it sounds like it would go, if there was, it would go beyond the policy violations or potential policy violations that we're seeing.
So there are policies related to the issue that you're bringing up, and if we see anything that constitutes an arrest that should have been made, then we would put that into investigation. That wouldn't be considered a lower level violation. But with a good thing to note, and you have Commissioner Sylvester here, who is probably more knowledgeable about this issue than I am, but just from viewing a lot of body camera, when there are emotionally disturbed persons involved, there can be generally, not this case, but additional considerations that might happen as to why someone was restrained in a certain manner, depending on what their conduct was before the end of the incident, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding case 9? Okay. Clerk, should we move forward to item 7?
Yes, you can direct to receive and file.
Okay. Okay, please direct and receive file. And the next item on our agenda is a personal action about coaching. So I'd like to move the following staff direction. Directed the city clerk to notify appropriate city department leaders to the Police Conduct Oversight Commission's request to have a clarification provided with respect to the definition, application, data classification, implications of coaching, as the term is used in connection with employee performance management, and to request those city leaders to appear at the commission's regular meeting on April 13th to provide responsive information and to respond to questions. Commissioner Sarah.
Thanks. I have some discussion on this. I like everything that is on the screen. I'd like to maybe add something. Specifically, there was a change made to the MPD manual. There was a section added, section 2-112 on coaching. And so I would just like to add some sort of a sentence or two that said, that also asked about how that decision was reached, to add that section 2-112 on coaching to the MPD manual. And just for sake of discussion, section 2-112 of the MPD manual, it's a brand new section added December 31st of New Year's Eve, and it's called, I believe, Complaints, Coaching, and Disciplinary System, and it kind of lays out complaint process, and it specifically says that coaching is not discipline, and it kind of talks about aspects of coaching, and that wasn't present in the MPD manual leading up to December 31st. However, we had discussions in the PCOC about coaching. We have an open research and study. There was supposed to be a city working group that would have, various people from different city offices, including the PCOC as part of that working group to discuss coaching and like what it is and all that. And there was no working group and this section was added. So it just providing context of my remarks here this evening of why I would like that sentence or something like that sentence added to the staff direction proposed.
Casey, is that something that we're able to do? I see that you have your hand up.
Madam Vice President, certainly we can add that to the staff direction. And I've tried to type down as Commissioner Sarah was explaining her position on that. When I was speaking to the chair in preparation for tonight's meeting, she asked that this item be added, and we did attach a fairly lengthy memo to the agenda that was submitted by the city attorney's office. And I have been in contact with Mr. Fussy and others about making sure that we have at the meeting coming up in April, the appropriate representations from other departments to speak to these exact points on an enterprise-wide definition of what is coaching. How is coaching not actually disciplined? It's not a matter considered of discipline for any other department. So that begs the question, how was it put into the manual, as Commissioner Sarah just alluded to, for MPD? How is that separate from other departments within the enterprise? And what made that change? And so I know that there is a rather lengthy email or memo from the city attorney's office that is appended to this agenda that explains that in some detail. In addition to that, we have invited or intend to invite through this directive the city attorney, the city's human resources officer, chief human resources officer, and the chief of police to all be present to answer those questions and other issues related to it, so that we have an enterprise-wide, or I should say organizational definition of what is coaching, how is coaching applied and used by all departments consistently, what is the difference between coaching and progressive discipline, and other types of questions that the commission may have. I know this has been an ongoing concern, so in preparation for tonight's meeting, I had hoped to have all of that prepared so that we could have had that discussion tonight. Because I was unsuccessful in those efforts, my compromise in working with Chair Jackson was to offer this directive so that this body felt there was a palpable action being taken, and it wasn't just a continuous discussion that cycles back around. So I'm sensitive to that idea that this has been ongoing and has been an issue raised at multiple points by this body. That was our compromise, was bringing forward this directive. So I believe I've heard the intention from Commissioner Sarah is to add in to this that there is an explanation needed for how and when and why section 2-112 to the manual was incorporated. And I think that's fine. I will understand that as part of the motion. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but wanted to provide that background just so all of you had that context as well.
Thank you.
And is this, do I need a second?
Point of order,
Yes,
is
you
this
do
a
need a second.
directive?
The action post here is a directive directing the staff to go make the arrangements to bring back the appropriate personnel to the next regular meeting of this body. The commission's next regular meeting, I believe, and Ms. Brock, please correct me if I'm wrong, is April 13th. And so we would anticipate at that meeting having those appropriate personnel present to speak to these issues and then to answer any of their questions.
Okay, so that being a directive, we don't need a vote. Is that correct?
No, you do need a second. A directive is an action of the body. Actions
Then
of the body must be taken by votes.
I'll second it then.
Okay, second by Commissioner Pino. Will the clerk please take a call or a roll?
Commissioner Sarah,
I vote yes with my proposed amendment.
Commissioner Crockett,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson,
I vote yes.
Commissioner McGuire,
I vote yes as well.
Commissioner Pinot,
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks,
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester, Commissioner Sylvester,
Aye.
Vice Chair Abdi.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
The motion carries. Okay, under new business, we'll take the next steps in the ratification of the subcommittee memberships, roles, and meeting dates. At our February meeting, we announced the following membership roster for the 3 subcommittees, and here are the subcommittees assignment and the chairs that we have approved. Can we bring that up on the screen by chance?
Ted, do you
I
have
did
that?
not provide that to go up on the screen.
Oh, okay, okay. May I have a motion to accept the subcommittees and chair assignments?
I don't think I got that information. I apologize. I was absent on February. Could someone just verbally state it?
Yep, so for the...
I would be happy to read these committees.
Oh, thank you. That would be great.
Policy and Procedures Committee membership is Commissioner Abdi, Commissioner Sarah, and Commissioner Sylvester. The Audit Committee membership is Commissioner Crockett, Commissioner Pino, Commissioner Sparks. The Outreach Committee is Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Jacobson, and Commissioner McGuire. Chairs were not identified.
Commissioner Pino?
I was just going to ask. I didn't hear chair, so I was wondering procedurally, should we wait for Chair Jackson to appoint said chairs, or will we decide that amongst our subcommittees with a quick election? If the clerk could advise.
I can speak to that, Madam Vice Chair, a bit, not with more detail, unfortunately. I understood that Chair Jackson's proposal was to bring forward not only the memberships of the committee, but also the chairs of each of the operating committees and the regular meeting dates of those committees. So it may be that between now and that next meeting, we would need to send out that information so that those bodies can begin their scope of work. I was under the impression from Chair Jackson that she had had some conversations about with certain members about leading the different committees. So I don't have that information myself personally, and we would need to hear from her what her intention was. Unfortunately, she had to leave tonight's meeting. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor the point. I've had one of those conversations with Chair Jackson. She didn't speak anything about setting dates and precedents, at least for the previous year in the PCOC, is that because we want to make sure that it works for the members, that the members kind of each subcommittee set their own dates and provided that information to the clerk, compliant with public meeting laws. And I moved along with the assumption with the audit committee as though that was the case.
Yeah, and so I know that those committee memberships have now been identified, and certainly I think that those of you who may have had conversations should work on starting to identify regular meetings so that we can post the regular meetings of the working committees of this body. I'm quite comfortable between now and the next regular meeting that we would ratify those more operating details. The assignment of the memberships to the committees, I think, is the main priority at this point, so that they can begin to work together.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to accept the subcommittees and chair assignments? Well, we're not doing chair right now, right? Just the subcommittees?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay.
Commissioner Sarah seconds.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Sarah?
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire?
Aye.
Commissioner Pino?
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks?
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester?
Aye.
Vice Chair Abdi?
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Okay, the motion carries and the subcommittee are accepted. Next, I will open the floor for discussions about the committee meeting dates.
Madam Vice Chair, I think we just agreed that that would be something we'd need to do between now and the next meeting, so that item will be passed.
Okay, perfect. And do we need a motion to carry that?
No, we'll just, it falls to the table and will carry us forward to the next meeting.
Okay. And then, so we're on agenda number 9, correct?
Yes, we're to the next item on selection of case summaries for the next meeting.
Okay. So our final item of new business is the selection of 3 case synopses for summary for the April meeting. And I will recognize Mr. Hopkins again and ask that he help facilitate the selection process for the 3 cases, and that we would like to select to have presented at the regular meeting in April. Mr. Hopkins, can you help facilitate this for us?
Hey, this is Andrew. I think for the selection process, I believe that Lisa might be helping record all this stuff now.
Okay.
think that might be new for the clerk's office, and I'm happy to jump in here and help.
sorry.
I think what's being presented to you is the list that the clerk's
Yeah.
office received from the Civil Rights Department.
Okay.
And of course, as I understand it, is the preference of this body to identify up to 3 cases from this list. The list was included with the agenda when it was distributed. So, Madam Vice Chair, it's just a matter of soliciting from members which of the 3 cases received the majority support from the body.
Yeah. Sorry, I can read through everything if you'd like, but otherwise, if people just want to run through it quickly and then voice your support, that's fine as well. Whatever's easiest for the Vice Chair.
Did everybody already go through the synopsis and we're ready to make a selection? Would it be helpful if you put it in the chat, or should we just verbalize it?
Yeah, I think if members can, maybe we can do a roll call, Lisa, just so people have individual, or if maybe before we do a roll call, if individuals have preferences, they can identify that now. But these are the cases. And then if we need to go through and call individual members and they can identify their top 3, we just need a mechanism. I'm sorry that we don't have a better process worked out for soliciting input from all the memberships. We have a slew of them in front of us and we need to pick 3.
Okay.
And Ted, can you put that case list back in front of us, Ted, please? And leave that in front of us while we're doing this process. And maybe just do a slow scroll. If anyone is interested in case number 1, you can see the details here of case 1. If no one's interested in case 1, we'll keep scrolling at a very slow pace. There's case 2. Stop here for a minute, Ted. Pause to see if there's interest from any members in selecting case 2.
I'm looking for clarity here. Are we selecting our preferences now? Or are we asking for people to elaborate on these?
Point now is to pick which of the 3 cases you want summarized at your next meeting.
Okay, so we're essentially voting now. Okay.
Yeah, I had the same question. I think in previous meetings we voted and we just put the numbers that were our preference in the chat. I'd like to just do that. I thought that was easy.
We can certainly do that. We need to vocalize that in a motion. So if people want to use the chat to identify those cases that they prefer, and if that's helpful, please do so.
Can we get a motion for that?
I move that the members of this commission vote for their top 3 choices of the 10 provided for us by way of the chat function to be recorded by the clerk, and will be given the top 3 as those to be considered for the next meeting.
You might want to ask if there's a second.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Sparks, I'll second.
Thank you. Do we need to put the case synopses up again, or does everybody know what they're picking? Perfect. Okay, so we got 6 people, so we need 2 more, right? Commissioner Crockett and Commissioner Jacobson. Have you selected yours?
Commissioner McGuire, Commissioner Sylvester, Commissioner Crockett, Commissioner Pino, Commissioner Sparks,
got it.
Commissioner Sarah, and Commissioner Abdi have all indicated their preferences. I'm not sure which commissioner I'm missing, noting that Chair Jackson is absent.
I think Jacobson.
Sorry, I was still reading. Sorry.
Okay, and clerk, if you have all the agenda numbers, can we wrap up?
There are 8 selections of case number 3 by my count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 unanimous. So 3 and 6 look like the cases. There's a question of, do you want case number 10, case number 5, or case number 2 as the third? And I don't know how you want to make that decision, or if you, the vice chair, want it.
Yeah, I see 4 counts for case 2. Is that incorrect? It is incorrect. My apologies.
I see 4 for case number 5.
Which would mean cases 3, 5, and 6. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yeah, let me just double check. 1,
2, 3.
I was wrong. 3
Yeah,
for
I
number
only
5.
count 3.
But I think that's the majority.
So we're
On the
deciding on
third
3,
case.
5, and 6?
Unless we hear any disagreement, 3, 5, and 6 would be part of the motion, and then we can direct the clerk to call the roll on the pending motion that Commissioner Pino made, and the selection would be case summaries for 3, 5, and 6.
Do I hear a motion?
I have that motion. If there's no more questions, the clerk can call the roll.
Okay.
Commissioner Sarah. Commissioner Sarah.
Aye.
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Aye.
Commissioner McGuire.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Sylvester.
Aye.
Vice Chair Abdi.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Okay, well, with that, we have included all items of our agenda this meeting. Is there anything else that anybody would like to speak on?
This
Commissioner
is,
Sarah?
excuse me, I just wanted to say I received a text from Chair Jackson, and she and her family are okay.
Good. Thank you for letting us know that. Anyone else? Okay. Well then, seeing with no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Night. Thanks, everyone.